I'm very inconsistent, I'm very lazy, and I always like to keep things very simple as well. Yeah, I'm really surprised by how good the aquarium looks just 2 days after a blackout. So I think that was the reason why we had algae issues, because welcome to a new video, everybody. I hope you're doing well. There's two things that I haven't done on the channel in a long time. Number one is to talk about what kind of liquid fertilizers I'm using. And the second one is a room tour. I haven't shown you guys all my tanks in a long time. So today we'll combine both things into one video, very efficient. Or like the Dutch people like to say it, 2 vliegen in 1 klap. Yeah, so currently I have 9 tanks up and running. So we have 5 on the shelf. We have the big shallow, that is 6. On the table we have the forest style Aquascape, that's 7. And over here on this side of the house we have the 70 liter Scapers tank and the 35 liter Scapers tank. So 9 in total. So we'll take a close look at every single one of them, kind of talk a little bit about what's new, and then I'll share my liquid fertilizer secrets with all of you, which are actually not secrets, but just very simple, very lazy dosing regimes. So let me just show you where I keep all my secrets hidden. So here in this cabinet, this is my fertilizer cabinet. So we need these 3, and we also need these 2, then we have everything. Now, to be very honest with you, when it comes to liquid fertilizers, I'm very inconsistent, I'm very lazy, and I always like to keep things very simple as well. So this is always kind of what I look for when it comes to liquid fertilizers. Basically for the past 6-7 years, as long as I've been busy with the planted tank hobby, I've always just used complete liquid fertilizer, like all-in-one liquid fertilizers. And basically for the past 4 or 5 months now, I've been using the fertilizers from Masterline. And I think most people that are watching my videos have probably not heard from this brand. So Masterline is a small company from Romania that was started by Marian Sterian. And I think Marian is just a very passionate planted tank hobbyist who just started developing his own liquid fertilizers, and he's actually doing very well now. It's becoming very well known. It's becoming a very well-known brand. The first time I heard about Masterline was probably like a year ago, something like that. So there used to be this very good aquascaping shop near my home, Aquarium Design Shop, and the owner was using Masterline in his show tanks. Then a few months later I traveled to Liquid Nature in Vienna. The guys over there were also using Masterline fertilizers. So I kept seeing this name Masterline pop up everywhere. So I got very intrigued, very curious. So I actually reached out to Marian asking if I could test his fertilizers. And he was very happy to support me. So these fertilizers, they were sponsored by Masterline. But I think you guys know me well enough that when I'm talking about a product, I'm completely honest and transparent. And when I'm telling you guys that I'm very enthusiastic about these fertilizers and I think it's very good stuff, then I truly mean it. Then it's not some weird sales pitch, sponsored video, whatever. So let's just quickly go over these one by one. Let's just focus on these 2 for now. So we have Masterline 1 and Masterline 2. So this is micronutrients, this is macronutrients. There is also a Masterline all-in-one, which is basically the exact same formula as these 2 together. But the reason why I chose to have it separately is because I'm using a lot of Aquasol in my aquariums, and Aquasol already provides a lot of macronutrients by itself. I also always use a lot of root taps in the substrate. So when it comes to the early stage of a new aquascape, I always like to start with just the Masterline 1, just the micronutrients. And then the third bottle is Masterline Carbo. So this is something I do not use very often. The bottle is very full compared to these 2 as well. Masterline Carbo is actually very similar, or maybe it's even the same as Seachem XL or Easy Life Easy Carbo. So it's just something that I use just to kill algae. So if I have some algae in my tanks, some thread algae, some beard algae, I will use a little bit of this just to get rid of it. But this is not something I use on a regular basis. And then lastly we have these 2 small bottles right here. So this bottle here is potassium. So just strictly just potassium, nothing else. So this is what I like to combine with the micronutrients. So I think we all know the ADA fertilizers, the Bright Decay and the Bright Mineral, I think it's called. So these 2 together is basically exactly the same as the ADA style dosing method. So just micronutrients and a little bit of potassium. So that's what I like to use as well in new setups where the soil is very fresh, the root taps are releasing a lot of nutrients, and you don't really need to dose a whole lot of liquid fertilizer. So this is what I use in new setups basically. And then lastly we have this small bottle right here, This is Stimulator from Vimy. This is something that I use after a trimming session, after I've just planted a new aquascape. In here is just some vitamins, and the idea behind this product is that it just helps to reduce plant stress and helps plants to adapt faster, to bounce back faster, you know. So I'm not sure if it actually really works. It's just I have it available, so sometimes I'll add a few drops. That's it. Okay, so this is pretty much everything I use on a daily, weekly basis. 5 bottles. Is that a lot? I think it's okay. So now let's go over every single tank. Then I can talk a little bit about how much I'm dosing, how often, and yeah, show you the results. Okay, so starting with the 70-liter Scapers tank. This one is now 6 or 7 weeks old. It's a very densely planted tank. It has a lot of plants. It's already fully established. It's stable. And with this aquarium, I just want a really fast plant growth. I want it to be super dense. So I'm using both the 1 and the 2. And I'm just following the recommended dose. So it's the recommended dose is 1 milliliter per 30 liters for both bottles. And 1 pump is 2 milliliters. So 2 milliliters is for 60 liters. This one is 70 liters, so I'm just sticking with 1 pump each. Now these 2 bottles are running a bit low, so sometimes 1 pump can feel like half a pump maybe. So sometimes I'll pump 1 time, sometimes I'll pump 2 times, sometimes 3 times. Like I said earlier, I'm very inconsistent. Sometimes I'll forget a day. So with this aquarium, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's so stable. It has such a dense plant mass. It doesn't really matter how many pumps I add in. I'm really happy with how this aquarium is developing. I've set it up during the Christmas holidays. And it's now beginning of February, so yeah, I would say I think it's 6 weeks old. The fish are a little bit skittish. So we have a group of the green neon tetras in here, and we have a pair of Apistogramma trifasciata. Yeah, also a little bit skittish. If you saw the 1 month update video of this aquarium, you might remember that we had some issues with blue-green algae. I was trying to get rid of it by dosing extra nitrogen in this aquarium. Didn't really work. So I just did a 3-day blackout, which ended, I think, day before yesterday. So that's why some of the carpeting plants are still a little bit upright and not completely growing horizontal. Yeah, I'm really surprised by how good the aquarium looks just 2 days after a blackout. Besides the green neon tetras and the Apistogramma, we have a small group of Olocinclus. So they're all currently on the glass right there. I think we have about 5 or 6 of them in here. And we also have 2 or 3 Amano shrimp. So they're keeping the tank absolutely spotless. I mean, besides the blue-green algae, I didn't have any algae issues whatsoever. I mean, there's a little bit of green dust algae on the glass and on the rocks as well, but yeah, that's something that just requires weekly maintenance. I think that's normal in a high-energy aquascape. Okay, then we're moving on to the 35-liter Scapers tank. So this is sort of like a Dutch style tank with mostly red plants. So this one works a little bit different compared to the 70. In this aquarium, I'm barely ever dosing the macronutrients. So what I'm dosing on a consistent basis is the micronutrients mixed with the potassium. So because of all the red plants in here, a lot of red plants will grow a lot more vibrant red when there's very low nitrate level into the aquarium. Basically, it has to be almost 0. So that's why I'm not dosing the Masterline 2 in here, only the 1. So this gives me very slow plant growth, but the colors are very, very intense, which you can't really see right now because I've just trimmed it. But I'll overlay some footage from just before the trimming session. So you might be wondering, okay, so you're not dosing any macronutrients, so why don't your plants show any nutrient deficiencies? That's basically just because the substrate is full of nutrients. So I'm using a very nutrient-rich aquasoil, the Neo Soil from Aquario, which has a lot of nutrients in it. And I've also stuffed a lot of root tabs into the substrate. And pretty much all the plants in here, except for that little patch of Bucephalus in the middle, are all root feeders. So they have all a very dense root system. So the substrate is full of nutrients, so that's why the plants never really show any nutrient deficiencies. So this aquarium was trimmed, I think 4 or 5 days ago now. So after the trimming session, I dosed the stimulator, and basically since then I haven't really dosed anything. So what I usually find is that if you trim the plants, they need like a week or so to kind of bounce back from that trimming session. And I think during that time they will not really use a whole lot of nutrients. So what I usually find is if I do start dosing a lot of nutrients, even though the plants are freshly trimmed, I will actually get a lot more algae issues. So I kind of just stop dosing until like a week after the trimming session. Yeah, even though it doesn't really look like much right now, this is it's a pretty fun tank. It's nice to have an aquarium without any hardscape and just with plants. It does require a bit more maintenance, a bit more trimming sessions, and you have to be considerate about how fast certain plants grow. So for example, the stem plant here on the left side, that's the Ludwigia adequata. It's a much slower growing stem plant compared to the two that are on the side of that. So that's the Ludwigia super red and that's the Rotala rotundifolia. So those two grow a lot faster and they need more frequent trimming than this one. So that's why this one is a little bit taller than everything else right now. I really love the pink flamingo, the cryptocorin, looks really good. Love the Boezeflandera kennegang as well. Yeah, I am thinking of taking this one down soon. Yeah, maybe it's just time for something new, but I'm not sure yet. Maybe I just have to set up another thing somewhere else. Okay, then we're moving on to the big one, the big shallow. I think it's looking really good right now. So the big shallow measures 120 by 30 by 50. So I think roughly it's about 180 liters. Well, with all the substrate, with all the rocks, I think we have like maybe 130 liters left. So with this aquarium, it's very simple. Masterline 1 and Masterline 2, I just dosed 3 pumps of each, maybe 4. So like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not always very consistent. So I think 4 or 5 days a week this will get fertilizer. So 4 or 5 days a week, 3 pumps each. But yeah, I hope you will all agree with me that the big shallow is looking really, really good right now. Actually, last weekend I took all the rocks out again, scrubbed them all with a steel brush just to get rid of all the algae. So the rocks were covered in black brush algae, and I couldn't really figure out why this happened. But you might remember my recent video about the CO2 system from ECI&U. This is a CO2 system that had a pH sensor. It's currently in the aquarium right there. So I was already using a pH sensor in my CO2 reactor. So in the cabinet right here, I have the Biomaster filter. In behind the filter, I have a CO2 reactor. You can't really see it right now, but behind the filter is another chamber for the reactor. And in there, I have another pH sensor. So that one has been in there since the very, very beginning. So that was July last year when I set it up. But that pH sensor was controlling my CO2 system. But with the pH sensor, one thing that you have to do on a regular basis is calibrate it. And that's something I just neglected. I never did it. I only did it the first time. So I think that was the reason why we had algae issues, because last week I inserted this new pH sensor from ECI&U, and after calibrating it, I put it into the aquarium, and the pH from this sensor was completely different from the pH from the other sensor. The thing is that these rocks that I'm using here, these are elderly stones or elderly rocks, and they release a lot of calcium into the water. So they're raising the KH and the GH, and basically they're making the water a lot harder. So because the water is harder, we need to inject more CO2. And yeah, if your pH sensor is not properly calibrated, and you're not injecting enough CO2, then you're going to get some algae issues. So hopefully right now these rocks will stay clean for a little bit longer. Not too long ago I added this new plant, these lily pads. I think it looks really cool. This plant is called Hydrocles nymphoides, something like that. It's like a small lily from South America. I think it looks pretty cool in this aquarium. But yeah, overall it's doing really good. Fish-wise, we still have all the amber tetras. We still have a small group of the gold ring danios. And there's one orange neon paskai rainbow, something like that. This guy actually jumped out a few days ago. Luckily I saw it in time and I managed to put him back into the aquarium. Okay, then we're moving on to the shelf. Let's start on top. So this aquarium is my no filter Guppy Fry Aquascape. So I've set this up I think 4 weeks ago now, and it's home to a whole bunch of small guppies. I think there's about 15-20 of them in here, doing really, really good. The aquarium itself is also doing really good. In terms of liquid fertilizer, this one will get Masterline 1 and 2, so complete all-in-one fertilizer, but maybe only once a week. So once a week, 1 pump of each, that's it. We don't have that intense light here, where we have a lot of floating plants as well, and the aquarium is still kind of balancing itself out, so we don't need that much liquid fertilizer yet. Also, the guppies get fed quite often, so I feed them pretty much every day, maybe sometimes even twice a day. So they eat a lot, so they produce a lot of waste, so we don't really need that much fertilizer in here. But overall, the aquarium is doing really good. I mean, without a filter, I'm really impressed. So I was a little bit doubtful about the carpet. So this is Glossostigma, which is actually an advanced category plant. So I wasn't sure how this is going to do in a no filter, no CO2 setup, but it's actually starting to spread nicely, so that's pretty cool to see. I am using reverse osmosis water in this aquarium. So pretty much all my aquariums, I'm just using regular tap water. But this aquarium and the red style Aquascape, the red style planted Dutchscape, is also getting reverse osmosis water. Yeah, I think that's why the plants are doing so well in here. I think if I was using tap water, the carpet would never spread so fast. I'm really considering doing more of these simple setups, low-tech setups without a filter, without a heater, without a CO2 system. I'm getting so much enjoying from this tank, and also the vase. So the vase is now up and running for almost a year already. So I think soon I'm going to do a 1-year update on the vase. I'm just getting so much enjoyment from this. Like, it's so simple. It doesn't require any maintenance whatsoever. I'm still doing weekly water changes, but I mean, besides that, I mean, the plant growth is very slow. It doesn't really get any algae issues, so I'm definitely really enjoying these simple setups. The vase is very similar to this aquarium in terms of liquid fertilizer, but here I'm dosing pretty much every week, 1 pump. I think here maybe every 2 weeks. This one gets very little light. It has a lot of floating plants, so this one really doesn't need many nutrients. Really love the red floating plants on top. I get a lot of questions about these floating plants. People don't really seem to know what it's called. So these are actually called red root floaters. Scientific name is Phyllanthus fluitans. Beautiful plant. In my opinion, it grows a lot better with very little water surface movement. So in these no filter tanks, they do very well. So the moss on this piece of wood is kind of like sprouting all these small, I'm not even sure what it's called, but it looks pretty cool. So yeah, just a very simple setup, no tech, just a light, but very rewarding in my opinion. Thinking of doing another vase as well, but something a little bit bigger. So I think this one is like 25 centimeters tall, maybe 15 centimeters from left to right. So I'm looking for something a little bit bigger, like maybe 30 centimeters or 35 centimeters high, and something a little bit wider as well, so we can definitely make a cool aquascape in there. Okay, moving on. So we have now tank number 3. This one you guys haven't seen yet, so this is a bit of a sneak preview. This is a new setup coming up soon. I've set this up, I think it was 10 days ago now. So as you can see, it's now going through its ugly phase. Some diatoms, some brown algae on the glass, on the rocks. So this one we're not going to spend too much time with. So it's a new setup, 10 days old. A lot of nutrients coming from the substrate, so we're not dosing any liquid fertilizer in here just yet. And then lastly on the shelf we have our Twinscape experiment. So these 2 tanks have been set up recently for our 3rd experiment. Right now we're doing low budget versus high budget. So both tanks have been set up with quite a lot of plants. Also the plants were taken from the previous Aquascape. So they're already in their submerged state, already developed. So they can definitely use a lot of liquid fertilizer. I'm doing a lot of water changes as well. So with these 2 tanks, every day, 1 pump each. Same here. So these 2 tanks are only, I think, 10 days old. So yeah, still very early days, but the high budget is definitely taking the lead. As you can see, the Monte Carlo carpet is already starting to spread nicely. The leaves look very vibrant and green. Over here on this side, not so much spread and not as vibrant green as in the high budget tank. Same situation going on with the Micranthemum ambrosum here in the middle. So all that new growth is looking very good. Very nice healthy leaves. But on this side, yeah, on this side just not as much growth. Now, I think it's unfair to say that the high budget tank is already doing so much better, because the plants in here are planted in aqua soil, so they have immediate access to all those nutrients. The plants in here are planted in dirt, which is capped with a layer of gravel. So it will take a while before those roots will find the dirt and get all those nutrients available to them. So yeah, I think both tanks just need to establish first, get all the plants rooted properly, and then we're going to trim them both at the same time and then see how fast both tanks grow back. And then I think from then we can kind of decide who is the winner. I'm really hoping that this plant in the middle here will start to grow well. That's the Nesea pedicellata species golden. It's a bit of a trickier plant. It's not a very fast grower either, but it's really beautiful. Get these really big yellow golden leaves. So I can't wait to see that one develop properly. And lastly, we have the forest aquascape. So this one was set up in, I think, August last year. So it's been up and running for quite a while. I recently made some changes to this aquarium because I was not really happy with how it was doing, how it was looking. So I actually removed a lot of moss from this aquarium. It's now starting to come back. I have a video on this whole process kind of waiting to be published. I'm just waiting for some of the plants in the background to sort of turn red and turn really beautiful, and then I will release the video. But in terms of liquid fertilizer, it's very, very simple. Masterline 1, Masterline 2, 1 pump each day. I'm saying every day, but I think 5 out of 7 days is a bit more accurate. So I'm really happy with how this aquarium is now looking after the changes that I made. Basically, a lot of the details were lost because there was so much moss in this aquarium and you just couldn't see any of the hardscape anymore. So I removed a lot of moss. I've added another branch over here on this side. Where's my finger? This branch right here. As you can see, it's a bit more light brown compared to the rest. So it's looking a little bit odd right now, but yeah, I'm happy with how this aquarium is developing. So in the background, I have some stems. Can we see it? Yeah. So this stem right here, for example. This one, that is Rotala wallichi, Rotala wallichii, whatever people want to call it. And that one is supposed to turn really nice and red, but it's taking a very, very long time. So I'm not sure why that is. But yeah, once the aquarium has a little more touch of red, I will release the video about this whole rescaping process. And yeah, I think that's it. I did have some issues with hair algae in this aquarium. So I've also been dosing the Masterline Carbo in here just to get rid of that hair algae. Basically what happened with this aquarium is I was just not injecting enough CO2, so you can just see the drop checker right there. What I usually do when I set up a new aquarium, I'll add a drop checker, then check for the CO2 levels, and once the CO2 levels are stable and the drop checker is nice and green, I'll then remove it. But it's kind of silly because you know these things can change over time. So what happened here was that, like, the CO2 pressure sort of dropped a little bit, so I was injecting less CO2 and that was giving me some algae issues. So always keep the drop checker in. Lesson learned. Alright, so those were my fertilizing secrets. So I think it was pretty simple, right? I mean, to sum it all up, in the new setup with Aquasol, I will either dose nothing for the first few weeks or just a little micronutrients with some potassium. Once the aquarium is a bit more established, I will swap to all-in-one fertilizer. Not every day, but like 5 days a week, something like that. And after a trimming session, a little bit of that stimulator. And if I have some algae issues, I will dose the carbo. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this insight into my liquid fertilizer routine. Don't forget to smash the like button. See you guys next time. Take care.